Leland Coyle, one of the prime assets reagents face in the Outlast Trials. He's a chain-smoking, sadistic cop who has some interesting views on race and gender. He uses an electric baton to attack reagents and even disobeying ex-pops. He's known for his out-of-pocket voice lines and for how much aura and swagger Red Barrels gave him. He was either the first or second prime asset to be recruited into the trials, and if we go based on the order of the comics, he was the first. And he is very popular in the fandom. Very popular. I am not the first one to make this video. Many have tried to dissect his deeply disturbed mind. Some only use the comics, some use his voice lines, some use 3-second clips without context talking about an infection from the documentary Red Barrels released. I'm afraid I might also become guilty of this, although I promise not to start with counting his toes to figure out what's up. What I will do in this video, however, is something a little controversial. As you may or may not know, all of the prime assets have voice lines that didn't make it into the game. I myself made some videos on this before, so I've listened to these over and over while editing. And most theory crafters avoid these voice lines, because it's possible that these aspects of his character were retconned. But I decided to take this risk and see what I could gather from them. You might also hear me glaze Happyheart in this video, because their analysis of Coyle is the best one I've seen so far. Many of my ideas are built off of theirs, so shout out to Happyheart, definitely go and watch their video, it'll make some parts of this one more comprehensible. Now, before anything else, I need to add some trigger warnings. It's Outlast, so there will obviously be mentions of murder and gore. But there will also be discussions of sexual assault, child abuse, racism, and self-harm. Please be mindful if any of these could trigger you. Now, I'll start off with a quick explanation of Leland Coyle's life before joining the trials. We can figure out parts of this through the comics and his voice lines. He was born in 1923 in Blackwell, Oklahoma. He faced sexual abuse during his childhood, which led him to become a bit of a delinquent and get into a habit of hurting animals, which is a common trait in psychopaths. And then he joined the Klan during his teenage years. Yes, that Klan. It's probably not a surprise that he is very racist. I'll get into why this is later on. He married his first wife at a very young age, only 19 years old. And 6 months later, he killed her by pushing her down the stairs. He joined the Marines to avoid investigation and fought in the Pacific Theater in World War II. He had 3 confirmed kills, but also 2 suspicious American deaths that happened in his company. After that, he joined the police force in 1947 and married his second wife. But this was not a beautiful fairy tale love story either, because he ended up extorting her family before killing them, and later her too. He got promoted to sergeant for apparently being an excellent cop, and he married his third wife. You'd think the ladies of Blackwell would know to steer clear of him by now, but it seems like his charisma was enough to make everyone ignore his suspicious history. And guess what happened to the third wife? She committed suicide through multiple gunshots to the head. Very impressive if you ask me. The average person wouldn't be able to keep shooting after the first bullet. With this, I mean that he also killed her, of course, and covered it up in the worst way possible. But he still wasn't arrested. Blackwell just liked and trusted him that much. Then, Clyde Perry started following him in a search for candidates for Project Lathe. Coyle noticed he was being followed and beat Perry halfway to death. But he didn't kill him, even though he easily could have. And despite having broken fingers and peeing blood, Perry noted that his charisma was undeniable and that he was a suitable candidate for Project Lathe. Okay, that was the quick recap. Now let's delve deeper into why Coyle is who he is. You can't really find out a lot about his childhood through his regular voice lines, but his removed voice line suggests that he was raised on a farm.
Saw a cow struck by lightning once. Kraut Black Angus. Caught fire and screamed like a child. Mama told Daddy to kill it, but he just opened himself a beer and sat down to watch it gallivant and caper. It ain't always a humdrum time in the country.
This is the line most people bring up when they talk about his childhood on the farm, since Kraut Black Angus is a cow kept for its meat. This suggests that his parents were cattle farmers. But this isn't the only line that suggests a past on a farm.
Wobbly's coming up like damn boll weevils!
This is another line that was removed. A boll weevil is a weevil which got its name because it feeds on cotton buds or bolls. Cotton is a crop that gets grown a lot by farmers in Oklahoma. This seems like it could also be a coincidence, but it's also a little bit too specific to be written off as a coincidence entirely. It suggests that he, at the very least, grew up near a farm. People have also suggested that he grew up in poverty because he grew up during the Great Depression. And while I believe that it's true that he and his family didn't have a lot of money, I don't believe it went as far as him not having food, mainly because of the farm thing. But American farmers did struggle a lot under the Great Depression. Crop prices were halved, or worse, and it was very hard for them to get enough money, so they probably struggled with things like clothing and electricity. Which might be another reason for his fascination with electricity. We know that he grew up in Blackwell, which is a really good choice for the character. Blackwell was a sundown town in Oklahoma, which basically means the town had signs warning people of color to be out of the town by sundown. It also had Klan activity, which implies that any people of color left after sundown were taken care of. All of this instilled a very deep, it's me against them mentality in Coyle, which only grew bigger over the years. Blackwell is also interesting in the context of Coyle and his obsession with electricity because of the 1955 Great Plains tornado outbreak. Unusual electromagnetic activity was reported, mainly St. Elmo's fire, which fits Coyle's character. Coincidentally, or not, 1955 could have been around the time Clyde Perry was surveilling Coyle standing in the storm, since the Coyle comic is dated in 1956. Another interesting bit of information I found is that the Blackwell Zinc Company smelter was the largest employer in the area at the time. This could be kept in mind. The presence of the factory apparently caused major toxic waste and illness. And it also means that most of the people around Coyle would have been blue-collar workers. This underlines his major hatred for laziness.
You lazy motherfucker's about to get woke up.
He might have this hatred because he grew up on a farm and around factory workers and was thus thought that being hardworking was a virtue. In the comic, certain objects are shown as Clyde Perry yaps about Coyle's past, like a comic book, for example, which seems normal in the context of a boy growing up, but it gets more interesting in the context of Coyle's deployment in the Pacific Theater. This was a battle between the Allied forces and Japanese forces. Perry reports that Coyle had 3 confirmed kills and 2 suspicious American deaths in his company. Below it, there's a number of objects that could easily be written off as decoration or something to set the mood. But when looking more closely, there's 3 sets of ears on a string, the trophies likely taken off Japanese soldiers he killed. This is not necessarily unusual. Soldiers often took trophies as proof of their kills, otherwise they wouldn't be able to be confirmed. But next to it are 2 dog tags, likely a trophy or souvenir taken off the American soldiers who he killed. This is not for purposes of proving his kills, obviously. The FBI distinguishes between kill trophies and kill souvenirs in the A to Z Encyclopedia of Serial Killers. A souvenir is an item used to fuel a fantasy, while a trophy is taken as proof of their skill. However, the end goal is the same. It allows killers to feel powerful and relive their crimes as a fantasy, making it a fetish object. It's likely that to Coyle, his takings from his kills were trophies. But the trophies don't end with the ear necklace and the dog tags. The same page also features 3 teeth. These could be Japanese trophies as well. And the biggest one, a katana sword. This is maybe the most obvious out of all of the trophies. He conquered not just the soldiers, but their weapons too. While Clyde Perry yaps about his wives, specifically his second wife, and how he extorted and killed her family before killing her, we're shown 3 fingers. One thicker one, a thinner one, and a thinner one with nail polish. Next to the finger with nail polish is a wedding band. This leads to the conclusion that these were trophies from his wife's father, mother, and herself respectively. He isn't shown with trophies for his first wife's murder, which suggests that this one was more planned and enjoyable for him, which I'll get into later. No trophies are shown for his third wife either, which was a more impulsive murder as well. Taking trophies is, as mentioned earlier, a common habit in serial killers. It is a way for them to feel powerful in a more subtle way than loudly declaring victory to everyone. This underlines just how deeply disturbed he is and how the murder, which may have been a sort of defense mechanism at first, became a habit very quickly. The killing of his wives was interesting. The first wife was pushed down the stairs, which possibly means it was an impulsive and emotionally driven decision. His second wife's marriage probably had ulterior motives based on the extortion of her family. Her death was more planned, he literally hunted her down. And the third wife seems like an impulsive murder again. Shooting even after the person is dead suggests overwhelming hate or rage. He had probably killed people before he killed his first wife. Probably in his clan activity, although we can't be sure. There's a possibility that this was his first murder of a human being. It suggests some kind of fight between him and his wife. He probably lashed out when they were arguing, and it might have even been an accident. He'd killed animals before, but this might have been the first time he murdered a human, and it might have started his murderous tendencies. His second wife likely had a rich or more well-off family, because Coyle extorted her family before causing an electrical fire to kill them, before hunting her down as well. This could mean that he entered this marriage specifically for the purpose of getting money out of it. It all seems a lot more carefully planned than his other murders. An electrical fire doesn't really arouse suspicion. And he made sure to kill the only witness, his wife. A perfect crime, really. His third wife seems more like a fight gone wrong than the others. Pushing someone down the stairs is very impulsive and leaves room for immediate shock and regret, but shooting someone multiple times suggests an immense amount of rage or hate. This one doesn't scream that his wife got too close to him or that they were fighting. She was probably more rebellious than his other wives, and he might have hated her before he killed her. So, he got rid of her. This guy has a higher wife kill count than Henry VIII, by the way. So, Coyle has war trauma and trauma from the Great Depression. But these are not the only major traumatic events that shaped him. His sexual trauma from childhood is something you see a lot in Outlast villains, like, for example, Mother Gooseberry and Eddie Gluskin. I could make a whole video on how Outlast uses such awful acts in a very good way in their games. Not just for shock value, like with a lot of horror video games and movies, but that's for another time. Based on context clues, I can make some deductions about the very shrouded circumstances of his trauma. It was possibly someone he trusted a lot, since he has major trust issues later on in life, and it's likely that his parents, or at least his mother, might have known about it, but didn't do anything to stop it. There is a removed voice line that suggests some resentment against his mother.
Wouldn't believe me. Knew from birth I was marked to die by lightning. Mama forced me into the bath, twisted my vitals, and shoved me in the water even though she knew the electricity could sneak up them pipes and cook me like a suckling pig. Bitch never was right in the head.
It was probably ongoing abuse, not just a one-time thing, since his trauma is rooted very deeply. His skewed views on sex certainly seem to suggest so. He describes sex as an act of power.
Truth is like the carnal act of love.
It's simply a matter of power. Power you don't got.
This line implies that he thinks he does have this power. Or maybe he's trying to convince himself of this. He might really be scared, but trying to convince himself that the circumstances since his trauma have changed. Something that I've stolen from Happyheart's video, now would be a good time to go watch it and then come back, is the let it shine theory, as I call it. He sings loudly in the dark basement in Kill the Snitch to make regents scared of him so that they won't attack him. He's loud, so he's intimidating. Kind of a bear defense tactic, the one where you put your hands up really high in the air and you yell to scare a bear off. He has many lines and moments suggesting that he sees rapists as the worst of the worst, despite obviously assaulting people himself. Obvious fear that he'll get assaulted if he lets his guard down even for a moment can be seen in his voice lines.
Catch me sleeping. Someday, they catch me, and they'll do with me every filthy and perverse thing their fevered native skulls can summon. Leave me broken and ashamed and crying, and they'll cut my throat and piss on me while I bleed out.
Some of his trials capitalize on this fear of his, possibly as a way to keep him angry enough to be the perfect prime asset. 2 MK challenges come to mind for me: Tilt the Scales of Justice and Teach the Police Officer. At the end of Tilt the Scales of Justice, he has some voice lines that suggest he feels like the regent's objectives were a violation of some sort.
You have violated Lady Justice!
And the more obvious,
You don't rape the law!
I feel like the average person would be angry about their evidence being tampered with, but their mind wouldn't immediately go there. It seems like the trials are often designed in a way to elicit the biggest possible emotional reaction in the prime assets. It's a good system, one that keeps your villains angry and the subjects of the therapy scared. At the end of Teach the Police Officer, the film reel is revealed to have footage of Coyle lying in a fetal position and shaking, having a panic attack. He's also covering his face so it looks like he's crying on top of the shaking. This is a completely different side of Coyle, one that the regents don't get to see since he's always overcompensating with his confidence and aggression. I don't think the reel is in the trial for the regents. I think it's there to make Coyle scared and angry about having his private emotions thrown in the open to the people he sees as potential threats. We don't know what happened for him to have a panic attack like that, but I can speculate that it has something to do with his past traumas being intentionally triggered. Everything in his past led him to have this obsession with safety, obviously, since he's a cop, to the point of seeming eager to be in safe confinement himself.
If someone would just make a prison that would hold me, someplace peaceful and close, someplace warm I could not escape.
So, to sum it up, he's really terrified and traumatized all the time. He has this need to be constantly scary and dangerous, but is tired of it, which is why he wishes for peace and safety, even if it means confinement. His line,
You have to project danger, rot gut danger, liquid anger. Fill yourself with enough poison that it leaks out around the edges. This is a class of people that don't know respect.
suggests that he's aware of his own defense tactics, and that it is at least in part on purpose. This line was technically removed, but I think it's still really interesting. With this, I of course don't mean that he's in any way justified in his behavior. Far from it. But I do understand where these violent behaviors came from, and at times I feel bad for him. Until he says something outrageous again, and then I remember to throw 4 bricks and a stun rig at his face. This behavior from him is something I actually saw in my teaching science class, something that is referred to as the cycle of injustice, where a person who feels like they've experienced an injustice will keep inflicting injustice on others to make up for their negative emotions. And in the context of Coyle and his obsession with justice, this is even more fitting. Some of his voice lines suggest an obsession with the idea of the perfect nuclear family and traditional gender roles, like this removed voice line.
If only If only they were upstanding citizens like myself. Pay your taxes, do your job, fuck your wife. Put a little something in the plated service. America don't ask much.
Or even this one from Primetime.
Gotta be careful about letting a woman dictate your life. Next thing you know, it's perversion and despair. Chaos.
The nuclear family is an idea that got developed during the Cold War of the perfect American family. And Dr. Easterman is also obsessed with this. All of the prime assets fill a role in this family dynamic, with Coyle being the father. Maybe part of the reason why Coyle himself is obsessed with this idea is because he was raised in a very dollhouse way, where he had to pretend everything was fine in his family. Or maybe this is just his American values and I'm reading too much into it. Both are entirely possible, but the way he describes his parents and remembering that hitting your kids was still considered socially acceptable and a good way to parent, I can imagine he got quite a few hits, especially during his delinquent era. He himself is the picture of forceful punishment with his baton and thirst for violence. He looks for crime even where there is none and makes up the punishment.
There's gotta be more punishment than crime.
The fact that he's the father of the trials makes me believe that he may be a lot like his own dad in his views of punishment and consequences. He's finally not the one being abused any longer, so he takes the role of the abuser. Speaking of a thirst for punishment, Coyle is seen enjoying the violence of the trials more than the other prime assets. I've gone over his possible use of assault as a defense tactic, but I haven't brought up his thirst for pain himself. Many see the clip of him tasing his own pistachios and easily label him as sadomasochist. And while this is really easy for fan fiction purposes, I don't think it's that simple. What I believe Coyle to be is a variation on sadists called an autosadist. As you may be able to tell from the name, autosadism refers to a love for harming oneself. This can be for sexual purposes, or it can be tied to self-harm as well. In Coyle's case, I believe it might be both. I know, this is a very bold statement, but let me explain. Coyle has a very strong obsession with punishing wrongdoers, but often does those same actions himself. Many people write him off as being a hypocrite or too dumb to realize this, but I think he does know, even if it is on a subconscious level. Voice lines like,
"I got honesty and integrity stamped on me. I'll show you."
seem to me like he's trying to convince himself more than anyone else. Like he knows he's doing wrong, and is desperately trying to convince himself otherwise. Especially when combined with the removed voice line.
"The trick to an effective lie is standing your ground. Never give a fucking inch."
He acknowledges here that he does lie, and that he knows how to do it well, despite the previous line being about his honesty. So Coyle is maybe also a criminal in his own eyes. I'm not implying that he sees himself on the same level as the reagents or the people he arrested in Blackwell, but it's like he believes that he himself deserves punishment. And this is where autosadism comes in. He hurts himself, partially because he likes it, and partially because he believes he deserves to be hurt. And obviously, he just enjoys zapping people, whether that's himself or other people. I don't think it matters to him. Another argument for this autosadism theory is the way he reacts to being hit by traps, bricks, bottles, or rakes. He always reacts with anger. If he were actually a masochist, I believe he'd react a lot differently. Now, why am I so adamant about this theory and why is it important? Well, mainly because it hurts my heart a little bit to see people just calling him a masochist. But it's also because I'm a firm believer of the previously mentioned let it shine theory. The one where he feels the need to keep people as far away as possible. If someone were to actually try hurting him in an intimate context, I believe he'd snap immediately. It might trigger some of his past traumas, and that's why he's so obsessed with torturing and hurting others. It's a do it to them before they do it to you mentality that he really seems to live by. It's clear that almost anything that could be wrong with someone has gone wrong with Leland Coyle. He's highly traumatized, has trust issues towards everyone he meets, sadistic tendencies, an obsession with safety, and much more. He's an awful person, but he's also a really cool and complex character. I wanted to delve much deeper, but my fingers honestly got tired of typing the script. Now, let's all take a moment to appreciate Julian Bailey's voice acting here, because he's just perfect for
Thought I'd turn the lights out, you sweet, ripe young things. We can get intimate.
Oh. Oh no. If you watched the video this far, I like you. If you want to add to anything in the comments, do so, please. I really love reading all of the different theories people have on this game. Thank you all so much for watching.